Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of The Path to 1 Million. We are at episode 51. Some of you are probably aware, many of you are probably not aware, that about a year and a half ago, I started a podcast. I was scared out of my skull when I had done it because, truth be told, I had never done anything in the world of broadcasting before in my life. But again, it's like, and I've talked about this before, if you have a business, it's always good to have a media company up front first, followed by your primary business on the back end. This is something that, for instance, Gary Vaynerchuk, he's the CEO of VaynerMedia, New York Times bestselling author. He's probably one of the foremost social media, digital people that is out there, right? He is like literally like a world expert in these areas, and he always advocates for having a media company up front, followed by your primary business in the back end. And one of the media outlets that is at your disposal is podcast. Anybody can literally start a podcast. All you need is some kind of a microphone to record something or another, and you can put it out there to the world. And there's different platforms out there that are available for you to choose from. Anyways, I started up a podcast. It was called Long Beach Impact, and you can still find it if you go to longbeachimpact.com. I did approximately 18 episodes of that particular podcast. I was interviewing local entrepreneurs and getting their stories and sharing their stories with basically the world. And then what happened is, life happened. My life went into upheaval, and unless it was directly related to bringing money through the door, I didn't focus on it because I was going through a lot at that time. So the podcast kind of waned. But I still kept the podcast out there. I kept the website running. I paid the fee every month to store the podcast episodes that were out there. But the one thing that I do remember is that when I did the podcast episodes and I was having the guests come on to the show, trying to get them on the show, of course, was always a little bit of a challenge because with a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of like want to shun the spotlight a little bit. They don't, it's like they almost feel like they're bragging. And I kept telling them it's not about bragging. It's about sharing your story. It's about inspiring others. And you never know who you're going to inspire or how it's going to impact you. And I remember that one of the guests that I had on the podcast, I interviewed him. The interview went great. I put the episode out there, and I remember afterwards, he actually sent me a text and said, "Wow, Cliff, I actually feel really validated by what we've done." And I didn't realize the impact that the interview had on him personally. I mean, I haven't even released the episode yet, and it already had a positive impact on him. I had a great interview with Lisa Remlo. She's the owner of La Strada restaurant here in Long Beach. And afterwards, her son sent her an absolutely beautiful text after listening to her podcast episode about how proud he was of her and how he was honored to be her son. And thanks for that, Matt. So, and it was just, I just got positive story after doing this. And that was it was like one of those moments. I don't think it was like a key particular moment, but it was just one of those things where I just realized at that moment that I'm not going to say that I have a gift for this, but if I have the skills to be able to do it, then I should be able to leverage this to be able to help more people and to share more stories and to get more stories out there. And podcast is a great platform within which to make that happen. One of the people that I often look to for inspiration is Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss is a multi-New York Times bestselling author. He wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, then he followed up with the 4-Hour Body, and then with the 4-Hour Chef. He's been involved with a number of smaller endeavors, but at some point in time, somebody actually convinced him to get into podcasting. And he really wasn't interested in doing it, but he decided to do it anyways as an experiment. If you go listen to his very first episode of the Tim Ferriss Show, he's actually drunk when he did that. He was so nervous and scared to be in front of that microphone. And to be honest, this is like something that I've noticed throughout broadcast history when I was out studying like famous people that were doing interviews. For instance, Larry King, he completely froze the first time. He wanted to be in radio all of his life. They finally hired him at a radio station. They finally had an incident pop up where he had to get in front of the microphone and actually take over a show for, I believe it was a half an hour. So when the light went red and his microphone was hot, he froze, completely froze. He just couldn't get the words to come out of his mouth. So Anyways, it's just something that's replete. Anyway, so Tim Ferriss, his podcast, The Tim Ferriss Show, has actually gone on to become the #1 rated podcast on iTunes. And he has had, it's been going on now for, I want to say like 400 episodes or 500 episodes, somewhere in that neighborhood. He's had some absolutely brilliant people on there. Some of that stuff is way over my head, which really isn't saying a lot. But the topics that they choose on there, some of them I find extremely fascinating. But like I said, he's had world-class performers on there. I love his interviews with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think those things are so funny. Jocko Willink is another great interview to listen to. But anyways, the other day, Tim Ferriss sent out an email to everybody who subscribes, and he said that they had 400 million downloads of his podcast episode. I mean, you think about that, 400 million, and then his average podcast length is 2 hours. So, I mean, that is a lot of content that got distributed out there. And a lot of the people that are on his show, you know, they get a chance to share their stories and share their experience. And who knows how many people that those interviews are actually helping. So I actually got curious. And like I said, I left Long Beach Impact running. So I went back into my podcast stats, which I have not looked at in probably close to a year since I stopped producing episodes. Anyways, I was shocked to find out that Long Beach Impact had 3,000 downloads. Considering I haven't done any marketing, I haven't done any promotion, I haven't sent out any emails, I haven't told anybody about it, somehow or another, people are finding this content, they are downloading it, they are engaging with it. This means like the average episode that I put out there of the 18 people that I interviewed, that, you know, like almost like 200 downloads per episode. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. You know, this is the beautiful thing about creating stories, about creating content, is it's always available for people to go and take a look at. So with this being said, one of the things that I really do miss, and going back and listening to my podcast, something that I really do miss is having this ability to have people be able to share their stories and get out, you know, their advice for people to be able to follow. And so with that being said, two big announcements. First off, tomorrow my plan is to launch this as an actual podcast. So if you can't catch the Facebook Lives, or if you're not really into video or whatever it is, the audio portion of this will be stripped off and will be put out there as a podcast. So I'll make sure to send that out there, and so you'll be able to listen to it and subscribe to it. And then the second thing is that as far as the story format goes of podcasting, I actually have a kernel of an idea that I have been nurturing now for several months. I had some great feedback on the Long Beach Impact podcast, but the #1 piece of advice that I got was that I restricted myself too much to geography. I really need to think bigger. So there is actually another podcast that I'm putting together right now. I've been kicking around some ideas as far as making that happen and putting that out there. That will be pure story format, again, creating a platform for people that are in our local communities to be able to come on there and share their stories with the rest of us. Anyways, I'm super excited about what the future holds. I'm super excited to get behind the microphone again and be able to interview these people. It really is something special. It really is something magical. So with that being said, I really do hope you guys are going to have a fantastic Sunday, and I will see you again mañana.